Okay, in this video, I want to talk about the different styles of abutments. We're going to talk about 8 different ways that you can use as abutments. Okay, so it's going to be kind of a long video, so I'll have to speak a bit quick. So this is a typical abutment, bridge site. The length from man to man, or the length of the span, really doesn't matter so much as as the same principles apply depending on regardless of what the span is. Okay, so the first choice is going to be just gravel, no concrete, no permanent abutment, just gravel. Some people may even use dirt. What happens if you just put dirt across in the hole here? So regardless of abutment, first thing you need to do is level off wherever you're going to build at. And I'm not going to talk about where to build or that in this video. I'm just going to talk about really the basic things of just the styles of abutment on this. Okay, so let me get a nice flat surface. Okay, so we have to get a nice flat surface. Now, elevation between bank to bank doesn't have to be completely level. You know, one bank can be high, other bank can be low, or vice versa, and that doesn't really matter so much. Okay, so we get a nice flat surface, and if you could do gravel, you just over excavate, maybe a foot or two in this area here. Typically, our ideal bearing area that we want to use as an abutment is about 2 foot by 2 foot. 2 foot, 2 foot down, so 2 foot in this direction, 2 foot down, 24 inches. And then, if you're going to put your abutment, let's say here at the center line, you'd want it 12 inches in this direction and 12 inches in that direction, right about there. So that way now we're talking about let's measure that, 2 foot by about 2 foot, 2 foot. Okay, and then the area in the other direction. So now we have the depth and the height. The other direction, going across this way, that's really going to depend on the width of your bridge. We typically plan on, if your bridge is going to be 8 foot wide, plan on building this 1 foot wider on each side. So an 8 foot bridge, 8 foot wide bridge, you want about a 10 foot wide abutment. Okay, so if you're using an 8 foot bridge, your trough or your area here would be 8 foot by 2 foot by 2 foot. Okay, pretty simple. If your bridge was 10 feet, you add 2 feet to that, 1 foot on each side, that'd be 12 foot. 12 foot by 2 foot by 2 foot. Okay, pretty simple. All right, so that's gravel. And if you're going to use gravel, make sure you do use an angular gravel. Don't use anything round. Don't use river rock. Use riprap. Use the size, generally about a 3-inch plus, 4-inch, something like that. You don't want something huge like a 1 foot riprap. That's going to be too big. But 3, 4, maybe up to 6 inches, depending on what you have available. And make sure you compact that really nicely. So you could use that. Now when we go into regular traditional abutments, the first choice you have, and I'm going to list these from least expensive to most expensive. You can see these over here. So I have all these different abutments lined up for you. We're going to talk about. So the least expensive abutment option is going to be our precast. Okay, so the precast, you will dig out a hole. And you'll just set these right in place. Okay, right, something like that. Okay, I'm not going to talk about where to place them at as far as the toes of the abutment. So I do have another video that talks about the toe of the abutment, protecting that toe. Okay, but this is pretty inexpensive. Now this one here, this model that I have, is just it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 rows. Most common is 3 rows. But some people use 1 or 2 rows, and it really depends on your application in the soils. If you have poorer soils, you want to go deeper, and that's gonna be true for all of these. The reason why they get deeper is because you have poor soils. If you have great soils, then you can get away with a much smaller abutment. But if you have to dig down further to get to good sound soils, then you have to go deeper, and that's where we start using these other ones that are much deeper. And the cost starts going way up, right? So, but this is the least expensive. Let me pull up a few pictures of the precast option. Okay, here we have this is a 90-foot long single wide bridge. It's going to be 3 of these abutments wide at the very top. and it's 3 rows. You can't see the bottom row, but it is 3 rows. So this is what it kind of looks like here. Pretty simple. We just excavated it out, stacked these on top. Pretty quick job. You don't have to. The great thing about this is that you don't have to worry about concrete drying. They're pretty inexpensive. Here's 1 block, 2 block, 3 block. There's a 4th block, another block there. You can kind of see where the seam is at between the blocks. It's kind of hard to tell, but and there's the third row down over here below grade. And this is what it looks like. You can see this on this side of the bank. The bridge is set up a little bit higher, and on this side, the top of this block is at grade. That means the bridge is sticking up a little bit on that side. This is really it's going to be low cost. Benefits of this one is low cost. You don't have to pour any concrete. They can be temporary. We actually do rent concrete abutment blocks, precast blocks out in certain parts of the country. They're super fast to install, right? So, and a lot of people who want to do it themselves, these are pretty simple to do it yourself. You just rent. They're only 1 ton blocks. Now, this is a pretty simple job. Now, this is here's another great picture here of the blocks here. You can see that they're just 1 ton blocks. They have lifting hooks on the very top. They're just like Lego blocks. They just kind of interlock. So with these blocks, we can do some pretty tall. You can see there's actually another row underneath this, but we can build some pretty tall abutments. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's 9 courses there. This is what the bridge looks like when it's done. So this is adds a retaining wall to the side of it. So that's a precast option. Set the bridge on top of there. We can with all these abutments, we can actually raise or lower the abutment depending on your soils. Okay, if we need to gain height in order to clear something or lower it down, we can do that as well. Okay, as far as costs go, this is by far the least expensive, but it's not that much cheaper than the next option. Let me get that ready for you. All right, I'm just going to move this abutment back out of the way. And the next option is going to be just a simple spread footer. Okay, a simple spread foot abutment. Let me bring that over to the site here. Okay, it'll just fit right alongside here, and our bridge would go right on top. Generally, ballpark, these are going to be 2 foot by 2 foot, right? That's kind of our minimum size is just 2 foot. You can see there 2 foot by 2 foot. Okay, 2 foot by 2 foot, and we talked about the width already. It's going to be 2 foot wider than the width of the bridge. Okay, so that's a simple spread footer. There's going to be a rebar cage that gets built inside this, so there is rebar in this. This is pretty simple because once you excavate down, you don't have to form it. You can just do what's called an earth form. So you can have just the earth be the form of the side of the abutment. Okay, you do want to finish off the top nice and pretty, but it's pretty inexpensive. You can form it if you want, meaning placing plywood all the way around there to make the sides all nice and pretty. But who cares? Nobody's ever going to see it. It's going to be below grade. Now you will have to, depending on your soils, and that's going to be the biggest consideration is soils, is the worse your soils are, the deeper we need to go in order to get to good soils. We have to over excavate in order to get to good soils. Alternatively, you can always excavate, add gravel, angular gravel, nothing round, and then build your spread footer on top of that. So either one is fine. Spread footers are pretty inexpensive, and a lot of concrete guys will build these spread footers because they're just so simple to build. The next option that's going to be slightly more expensive, not a whole bunch more, is going to be a spread footer. Let's go. Oh man, I didn't make that a group. Let me do that real quick. All right, so now we have this spread footer with the sofa back. Okay, all that is the same kind of spread foot abutment. But now all we did was add what we call a sofa back to that, and that helps retain soils. Okay, so that'll go something like that, and now our bridge would sit inside here, and your this sofa back acts as like a retaining the soils from the bridge. So the top of this would be right at the top of the bridge. Okay. So this sofa, there's a couple of options you have. You can have a sofa back with just the back of the, and we call it a sofa back because it looks kind of like a sofa. You would sit right over here and you have the back of the sofa. So you can have a sofa back with or without an arm. See this arm over here. You can have it with an arm or we can have it without an arm. Most of the time it's done without an arm, but we also seen that some engineers want to see an arm there, so we'll build it with an arm. Either way is completely fine. Okay, so all you're doing is adding some extra concrete to build that sofa back. Now, this part of the abutment is still going to be 24 inches, okay, 2 foot, and then we're adding typically 8 inches for that. So you do have to add more concrete, and the height of this, this is 1 foot. Actually, that's not even going to be terribly accurate unless you're doing a 20-foot bridge. The height of the sofa depends on the is controlled by the height of the bridge, the thickness of the bridge. Okay, so that is a sofa back. It's a spread foot abutment with the sofa back configuration. Okay, let's just move that back. And the next, so now your cost starts jumping way up. And the reason why we start having to go to this abutment style is, actually, I'm going to go back to this one. Sometimes whenever you're building this kind of abutment, right, and now that's 24 inches wide, right? So let's say your soils are really poor, so now you're having to make your abutment super deep in order to either get below the waterway or get below your poor soils in order to get to good soils. You're going really deep, and that amount of concrete can be very expensive. That's a ton of concrete there. So the alternative to that is building this, let me back it up real quick, is building this stem wall. This is called a stem wall style of an abutment. Okay, so now you can see we're going much deeper in order to get to good soil. Okay, your bridge would still sit right on top of here, and now this is what the weight from the bridge is being transferred from the bridge to this stem wall all the way down and to this footer over here. So the size of the footer is really going to vary greatly depending on the soil, but it can be generally 6 foot wide by the width of the bridge plus 2 feet, something like that. But this is going to, having this little stem wall saves all that concrete cost. Now the stem wall, it can be, we can put that top of the stem wall flush with existing grade, or we can raise it up in order to gain elevation as well. Okay, so so there's a couple of different options with that. That this footer here does have to be pretty deep in the ground. You can't have it at grade. You can't have it like super high up where this is sitting way up over here, right? I have an excellent video that talks about the abutment toe. The abutment toe on this one would be right here. If we do that, then we run the risk of this entire abutment want to rotate over, right? It wants to just topple over. So we need lots of weight on this area here to keep that abutment from wanting to rotate over. Okay, so that's a stem wall. Now we can do stem walls with a sofa back as well. Actually, I think I have a picture of that. We built one typically a sofa back, the stem wall with a sofa back. It's only really done on government projects. But let me show you what that looks like real quick. Let me find some pictures. Well, this is going to be anticlimactic. I couldn't find any really good pictures of what that footer looks like. Well, the footer just looks like a big old trench and a giant mat of rebar and just a bunch of concrete. You can see this is where we're forming the top of the stem wall. You can see why it starts getting pretty expensive because there's a lot of forming, there's a lot of rebar, there's just a ton of material, a ton of labor when we start going to these stem walls. So a stem wall with a sofa back is pretty labor intensive to build. You can see what that looks like here. So this is the stem coming down. It goes down way down over here, and then we have the sofa back with this retainer over here. This retains the soil. So like the sofa back arm, instead of coming out, they have it flared back. So the sofa arm can always flare back and tie into this retaining wall. Okay, and this is what the bridge looks like here once it's set in place. You can see here that the top of bridge is right at the top of that stem wall. Okay, let's go back and look at the other types of abutments. Okay, so that's a stem wall. You can have it with or without a sofa back. It's entirely up to you. Now the next one is a caisson. Now caissons, typically you'll see these only on government projects because they are fairly expensive to build. So you have the cost of a traditional, and not really the grade beam. A spread footer and a grade beam are almost identical. They're almost identical in the size, 2 foot by 2 foot by 2 foot wider than your bridge, right? So this is the same, but now you have the added cost of these big, long caissons. So they actually get a crane out there. I'm sorry, a drilling rig to drill down there. These are 24-inch diameter holes. They can be 36, they can be 18, they can be, there's very different sizes, but these are really, for most private jobs, and even for government jobs, these are really a chore to build. You have to drill holes in the ground, and then you hope that your soils don't fall in. It's called sloughing off. The soils will slough off inside the hole. Then you have to pull that out. Then you have to, if you start getting water inside the holes, you have to get a pump to constantly pump the water out while you're trying to pour concrete in. Even after you get the holes dug, you have to have an inspector go out there to verify the holes. Then you have to have rebar set in these, and this is not something you can do by hand. You have to have a crane on hand just to set the rebar cage inside these holes. Okay, and you're hoping that you don't slough off. When these rebar cages go down, if they start scraping the sides of the wall as they go down, it just creates a mess. Then you have to pull if that happens, you have to pull the cages out, get the dirt back out, get the water back out, put the cages back in, wait for an inspector, city and county inspector, to go out there and inspect it. If he approves it, then you have to get concrete inside there. You just can't pour concrete inside it from the top. You have to pump it in. There's a big hose that goes from the grade, from the top of the abutment all the way down to the bottom, and they pour it. They pump it to the bottom and fill it up slowly. And you hope that there's no water. You hope you didn't slough off. You hope that there's so many things that can go wrong, and the costs just go way up when it comes to caissons. But they are very popular on government jobs because obviously they don't have to worry about such a large budget. Okay, that's caissons. Sometimes there's only 2 caissons. Sometimes there's 4. Sometimes there's 6 per abutment. It really varies on your site. The depth of the caisson varies as well. As you can probably tell, I am not a fan of caissons because so many things can go wrong, and the time to build is just way out there with inspections, with concrete curing, with the complexities. I'm not a big fan of caissons, but we can surely design them. We've designed them plenty of times. We certainly won't build them ourselves. They're specialty concrete guys. A regular concrete guy around town in most towns will not venture to build you a caisson. They'll build you a spread footer, and they may even build you a spread footer with a sofa back. That's not that difficult, right? That's where a typical concrete guy stops. A typical concrete guy that does driveways and sidewalks, he'll do the first 2. He probably won't do a stem wall. That's probably beyond his scope, and he certainly won't do a caisson. There's specialty contractors that all they do are caisson abutments, and they're just not cheap. Okay. The next step is something similar to a caisson, but they're helicals. So instead of using concrete, and these are everything over here is concrete. The caisson is concrete. Okay, and just like the stem wall, that grade beam the caissons can stick above or below grade. Let me find some pictures for you real quick. Right. I just Googled Caisson bridge rebar. So that this is what the rebar looks like. So that's huge, right? Of course, that's a very big caisson there, but they're just typically at least 20 feet long, and they're just super heavy. It takes a big crane. This is what the drilling rig looks like whenever they're drilling these in place. Now this one has a concrete sleeve over it, meaning that they've had some problems with sloughing. When there's sloughing problems, they do have to start using a sleeve in order to stabilize the side. Okay, so you have a big giant excavator with a drill. Then you have all this cage. You have this rebar cage sticking up, and then the actual you can see here. So you can have this. You can see the caisson here. You can have the caisson below grade. You can have it above grade. And you can see here they're actually building a grade beam on top. So it's typically a much bigger job when you're doing caissons. Of course, looks like a big highway job. Our grade beam, whenever we're designing them, typically our grade beam is still pretty small. We're not doing giant caissons like this, but they can become a bit expensive. Now we go to helicals, and all my pictures for helicals didn't really, you really can't see much. They look like just pieces of steel kind of sticking up out of the ground. Helicals, going to this option right over here, helicals, all we do is drive a bunch of, they look like giant screws. We drive a bunch going straight down, and we drive, these are called the battered helicals going back. So instead of one massive caisson, we do these steel drills. Let me pull that manufacturer. We represent Helical. That's who we're certified through. You can see they're just a smaller excavator. We actually the head that we have, we go out there with an excavator, mini excavator, to do the install, and that's something we can actually train contractors to do. Most often, not nowadays, we'll train contractors, local contractors, dirt contractors, to run our helical head. We'll rent them our helical head. We'll sell you our materials, and then your local guy can do it. A dirt contractor. Dirt contractors, I love working with them. They know the soils. They know they have the equipment already there. They have the manpower. So we like working with them. We'll train them. We'll rent them our drive head. We'll sell you our helical anchors, and then they install it locally. The great thing about these, you can see here, this is very similar to what we would do. We excavate down. We're making room for our grade beam. The grade beam is going to be identical to just a spread footer. So we're drilling down. We excavate, then we start drilling down. We don't have to worry about water. We don't have to worry about inspections. We don't have to worry about any of that stuff. Soils are, it's so much easier to work with these helicals. They come in about 6 foot long increments. You can see down over here they have these little fins, and we just start drilling them down in place. Let me see if they have better pictures on their website. There's some finished products here. Okay, so yeah, so this is the system we have here: mini excavator with a drive head, and they just drill them straight down. You can see there's just 2 guys with a third guy up on top. Oftentimes we do it with just one guy on the ground, one guy in the excavator, and they just drill these down in the ground. These are the battered piles, and those go straight down in the ground. It's fast, it's easy, there's a great picture of a stack of helicals. Okay, so that's what they kind of look like there. They have these. They're called, well, they look like fins, but they're called flights. There's typically 2 to 3 flights, and these are over here. You can see these are the extensions, so they can go. Typically, we're going anywhere from 20 to 60 feet down, but it's a really easy job. We're not having to work with any concrete. This is, I think that's exactly the kind of equipment we have. We like to use. So those are helical drive heads. Now, there's a couple of options when it comes to helical abutments. Traditionally, we would pair helical anchors with concrete. So you're basically drilling down with these, and then you're building a spread footer on top of that, right? And that's how you do it. Now, sometimes we've had these where we get so close to the waterway, we're like kissing the waterway. We're so close over here that there's not even enough room to pour concrete, or for whatever reason, we just can't get close enough to pour concrete, or the job site's so far and remote that we can't even get a concrete truck up there. It's too rough and rugged of an area where getting a concrete truck is just not possible. So in that case, we will just do a steel grade beam instead of a concrete grade beam, and that's the very last one over here. We use a steel grade beam. Let me pull that one over. It'll look kind of like this, okay? So we'll use a big fat I-beam. So this is our grade beam. This is a helical with I-beam. So our helicals are just, we weld our helical anchors to this I-beam, and then we set our bridge on top of this grade beam. This grade beam is made of an I-beam, and that's how we make that work. This is awesome because we can get super close to this waterway without any concrete whatsoever. Okay, we can get really close. We've gone up to within 6 inches of the side of the waterway. The amount of excavation required is very minimum. Right. Last time we did it, we actually put the bottom of the grade beam right at the bottom of the bridge of the grade, so kind of like that, right? And then the bridge set on top of that. So that's a pretty neat way to build an abutment. Of course, we're not. I will preface that at Paragon we employ welders and fabricators, not concrete guys. So we're always going to try to not do concrete because we don't know concrete very well. Concrete to me is a huge chore. There's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of wet concrete, and you have to wait for it to dry. It's just not our cup of tea. So whenever possible, we like working with steel, but we do know that this option here is going to be very expensive. Not as expensive as a traditional Caisson, actually. So well, it's pretty comparable depending on all these three, all the Caisson options, all these with the longer legs. They're all going to be in the comparable ballpark. This is kind of medium expensive. These are really inexpensive. This is super inexpensive. But this, when you need it, you need it. When you need a solution that doesn't require any concrete, allows you to build really close to the waterway, allows you to, even if you have sandy soils, poor soils, mucky soils, we can drill through all that and get to firm, solid soils. So the helicals are a great solution for certain situations, but not all. Grade beams, these are by far the most popular. Okay, I know this video is running super long, so I hope this video helps. Any questions, give us a call. I appreciate it. Thanks.